Emily Carter knew the morning scent of her home well. It was a blend of the nutty aroma of freshly ground specialty coffee beans, the subtle fragrance of lilies in the living room vase, and the persistent trace of Michael Anderson's cologne, which lingered on the pillow next to her. For the last 5 years, that scent had been her very definition of the word home. This morning, like hundreds of mornings before, she watched in silence, sipping her coffee, as her husband chose a suit for work from a colossal closet. Michael Anderson was a charming man. Emily had to admit it. Even after 5 years of marriage, his charisma hadn't faded. He had a strong build, a well-defined face, and a smile that could melt even the most inflexible members of any boardroom. He came from a very humble background, a fact he often embellished in stories that sounded like heroic dramas, as if he were a prince who had conquered the world on his own. The irony, of course, was that the world was Emily's. Emily was the sole heir to a business empire her father had built from the ground up. The Sterling Group, a massive conglomerate spanning real estate and luxury hotels, was now in her hands. She was intelligent, decisive, and respected in the business world, a queen on her own throne. But at home, in front of Michael, she took off her crown. She wanted to be just a supportive wife, a partner. She had given Michael the position of CEO of one of her subsidiaries, unlimited access to the finest amenities, and allowed him to be the public face of their shared success. In the public eye, Michael Anderson was the brilliant husband who kept his wife in luxury. Few knew the truth, that Michael was merely the moon, reflecting the light of the sun that was Emily Carter. "Honey, what do you think of this one for the lunch today?" Michael's voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned her head and saw him holding 2 silk ties. One was navy blue, the other maroon. "The navy blue," Emily replied softly. "It goes better with your shirt." Michael smiled broadly. It was the smile Emily had once fallen in love with. "You always know best." He walked over and kissed her on the forehead. His expensive cologne enveloped her, a little strong for the morning. "I have an important meeting with those investors from the UAE. I'll probably be late." Emily nodded. She had grown used to those words. Important meetings, potential clients, new projects. The excuses had become more frequent in recent months. He used to tell her the details of his meetings. They would discuss strategies together. Now, his answers were always brief and vague. If she tried to probe further, Michael would laugh and say, "Darling, don't you worry about those technical details. I've got it handled. You just sit back and enjoy the results." Something was wrong. A small alarm in Emily's mind had been ringing for a long time, but she kept silencing it. She didn't want to believe it. She had built this paradise with her own hands. She couldn't burn it all down over a mere suspicion. But the small pieces of evidence were accumulating, like dust settling slowly on her gleaming furniture. There were credit card charges for dinners at restaurants they had never been to together, phone calls in the middle of the night that would end as soon as she stirred in bed, a faint scent of an unfamiliar women's perfume on his suit lapel, one that didn't belong to his middle-aged secretary. Emily tried to dismiss it as paranoia. Maybe she was just tired. Running an empire like the Sterling Group and trying to be the perfect wife was exhausting. She wanted to trust her husband, the love they had built, the love that had made her willingly hand him everything. "Oh, by the way, honey," Michael said, adjusting his luxury watch, a gift from Emily for their 3rd anniversary. "I'm going to need some extra funds for entertainment expenses, about $450,000. You know, you have to treat these people well to get projects flowing." Emily looked at him. It wasn't the first time he had asked. Until now, she had never questioned it. She would simply send a quick message to her trusted CFO, Mr. Reynolds, to transfer the money to Michael's personal account. She believed it was part of her support as a wife. But today, a small seed of doubt sprouted. "What project is that, Michael?" she asked, trying to keep her voice as neutral as possible. Michael's expression changed for a split second, but Emily's trained eyes were quick enough to catch it. "The resort development in the Hamptons. I told you about it. It's in the final stages. We have to go all in." Emily fell silent. She knew every project in her company. The Hamptons Resort project existed, yes, but it was barely in the initial planning phase. There were no meetings with investors scheduled, much less from the UAE. The lie was so smooth, so natural, that it hurt. But Emily simply nodded quietly. "All right, I'll take care of it. Thanks, my love." Michael gave her another kiss on the cheek, this one quicker. "I'm off, take care." The front door closed. Only silence remained, and the slowly fading scent of Michael's cologne. Emily sat motionless, the coffee in her cup now cold. The paradise she had built felt as if it were made of glass, beautiful and brilliant, but terribly fragile. And that morning, for the first time, she began to notice tiny cracks running across the entire surface and was afraid that if she touched them, everything would shatter. She picked up her phone, but it wasn't Mr. Reynolds she contacted. She opened her photo gallery and looked at their wedding photos. Michael was holding her tightly, smiling happily. At that moment, Emily had believed the look in Michael's eyes was true love. Now she wasn't sure if it was love or the look of a lottery winner who had just hit the jackpot. Emily set her cup down with a small clink. She had been playing blind for too long. She was a businesswoman, a leader. Her business instincts had never failed her. Why had she turned them off for her personal life? She stood up. The look in her eyes had changed. The softness around the edges was gone, replaced by the sharp glint of a CEO ready to make a tough decision. She wasn't going to destroy her paradise. She was simply going to expel the demon that had snuck into it. She was going to find out the truth, no matter how bitter it was. And if there was a betrayal, the traitor would never know what hit him. Emily wouldn't scream or cry. She would smile, and that smile would be the beginning of his end. The day passed in silent tension. Emily executed her plan with a surgeon's precision. She approved the transfer of the $450,000 Michael had requested, but she instructed Mr. Reynolds to trace the flow of that money. The result was what she expected. The money wasn't used to entertain investors. It was immediately transferred to another account to make the down payment on a luxury sports car, a car Emily had never seen in their garage. At home, Emily played her part to perfection. She remained the loving wife. She made breakfast, asked Michael about his day, and listened with a faint smile to his new lies about fictitious meetings and projects. Every lie Michael told was another nail he hammered into his own coffin. Too drunk on arrogance and freedom, Michael didn't notice the icy shift in his wife's eyes. He took Emily's silence as a form of resignation, but it was the calm before the storm. That afternoon, Emily decided to allow herself a small luxury. She headed to Madison Avenue, the most opulent shopping district in New York, lined with international designer boutiques. It wasn't that she really wanted to shop. She just needed a space to think. Away from the theater of her home, she sat at a cafe, ordered a chamomile tea, and planned her next moves. She had already contacted her friend and trusted lawyer, Jessica Davis. Their meeting was scheduled for the next day. With her mind a little clearer, Emily walked to the parking garage. Her steps halted when she saw a familiar car. She had never seen it in person. But there it was, a cherry-red Porsche 911 gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The license plate was new. It was the same car listed on the payment documents Mr. Reynolds had sent her. Her heart quickened, not with pain, but with adrenaline. The prey she was hunting was right in front of her. And sure enough, a woman appeared from the lobby door. She looked to be in her mid-20s, tall and slender in a tight dress more suited for a nightclub than for shopping. Her face was pretty, but her eyes were full of arrogance and an air of superiority. She walked with a conceited sway toward the red sports car. Emily simply watched from a distance. She could have left, ignored the scene, but something stopped her. She wanted to see the face of the woman who was conspiring with her husband to betray her. The woman, whose name she would later learn was Chloe Bennett, seemed to notice Emily's presence. Her eyes scanned the area until they finally met and locked with Emily's. A cynical, triumphant smile spread across her bright red lips. Instead of getting into the car, Chloe walked toward Emily. Here it comes, Emily thought. The moment of truth. She straightened up, keeping her face as impassive as possible. "Hello, Mrs. Anderson," Chloe greeted with false deference, but her eyes danced with mockery. "Are you all alone?" "Hello," Emily replied curtly. She had no time or energy for small talk. Chloe let out a little laugh, a sound like nails on a chalkboard. She tossed her hair back, a theatrical gesture designed to show off the diamond earrings she wore. They were the same model Emily had seen in a jewelry catalog the week before. "I just wanted to say hello. I thought it would be rude not to, running into my lover's wife. Don't you think?" Chloe said, emphasizing the word lover. Emily remained silent, letting the woman continue her monologue. Slightly annoyed by the lack of the angry reaction she expected, Chloe pulled out her ultimate weapon. She raised her hand and dangled the car keys with the Porsche logo right in front of Emily's face. The keychain was still wrapped in plastic. "Look," she said proudly, her voice rising as if proclaiming a great victory. "Michael bought it for me." Chloe paused to savor the moment, then delivered the line she had prepared to destroy Emily. "He says I'm worth so much more than the boring old wife he has at home." The words didn't slap Emily's cheek, but they were designed to hurt more than any physical blow. They were meant to stab at her pride, to shatter it and make her feel insignificant. Chloe waited, her eyes bright with anticipation, expecting an outburst of anger, tears, or at least a face pale with shock. She got none of it. Instead, Emily smiled. It wasn't a sad or forced smile. It was a genuine, slight smile, filled with something Chloe couldn't understand. Amusement, as if she had just heard the funniest joke in the world. "Congratulations on your new car," Emily said, her voice calm and clear. That was it. The reaction completely threw Chloe off. Her plan to humiliate Emily had utterly failed. It was like punching at the air. All her best ammunition had turned out to be blanks. Emily didn't give her time to recover. She nodded politely once more, then turned and walked toward her own car, parked a few rows away, a black luxury sedan that cost 3 times as much as that red sports car. Once inside the car, with the door closed and all the outside noise blocked, Emily's smile slowly faded. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white, her breathing becoming ragged. She did not cry. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford for this betrayal. The pain was there, sharp and piercing, but above it, something else was growing rapidly. A cold, glacial anger, the anger of a queen whose kingdom had been defiled by pawns who didn't know their place. The boring, old wife. "I'm worth so much more." Chloe's words echoed in her ears. What a pair of fools. Chloe, so proud of the car she was given, not knowing it had been bought with the money of the woman she was insulting, and Michael, her husband, so stupid as to think he could play with the very source of all the luxury he enjoyed. They both thought they had won a battle. They didn't know that Emily didn't even consider this a war yet. It was just a game. And that night, Emily was going to flip the board. She was going to remove all the pieces, cut off all access, and leave them stranded with nothing. Emily started the car. As she drove out of the parking garage, she caught a glimpse of Chloe still standing by the red car, looking bewildered. Emily smiled again. This time it was a smile for herself, the last smile of a wife. Because the Emily Carter who would return home that night was no longer the wife Michael knew. She was an executioner, ready to carry out her own verdict, without hesitation and without mercy. The drive home felt different. The streets Emily always drove, the towering skyscrapers, the brilliant city lights, everything seemed foreign, as if seen through a different lens. The magnificent penthouse waiting for her at the end of the journey no longer felt like a paradise. Tonight, it felt like a grand theater stage, and Emily was tired of playing the blind protagonist who didn't know her own script. She parked the car in the garage with precise, emotionless movements. Beside her, a wide, empty space waited the spot where Michael's car should be, which at this hour was parked somewhere else, in another life. She entered the silent house. The service staff had already retired for the night. Only the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the living room kept her company. Each tick sounded like a countdown. She didn't change her clothes or touch the dinner that had been prepared for her. She simply sat on the ivory velvet sofa and stared at the door, waiting. Around 11 p.m., she finally heard the sound of Michael's car. The front door opened, and he walked in with a jovial smile, even humming a little tune. He seemed so light, so carefree. He smelled of expensive liquor and the same women's perfume she had smelled in the parking garage. the scent of a false victory. "Oh, honey, still awake?" he asked, leaning in to kiss her forehead. Emily didn't pull away. She let his lips touch her skin. They felt cold, like the touch of a stranger. "I was waiting for you. How was the meeting?" she asked, her own voice sounding normal even to her own ears. "Incredible!" Michael exclaimed, taking off his jacket and tossing it carelessly onto the sofa, a habit Emily had always silently detested. "The investors were totally impressed. This project is going to be a massive success. We'll have to celebrate big." Emily just nodded. "I'm glad." "You must be tired. Go take a shower. I'll be in a moment." Michael, completely unable to read anything outside his comfort zone, nodded obediently. "Don't be long," he said with a playful wink before disappearing into the bedroom. That's when Emily moved. As soon as she heard the sound of the shower in the bathroom, she stood up and went not to the bedroom, but to her home office. That room was the control center of her kingdom, soundproofed and protected by a state-of-the-art security system. It was where she felt most powerful, most herself. She sat in her leather chair and opened the laptop connected to her company's private server. Her fingers flew over the keyboard at a terrifying speed. She didn't need to hack anything. As the majority shareholder, she had access to all financial information linked to her name, which included the joint accounts and the credit cards she had given Michael as an authorized user. The first screen she opened was the transaction history of the joint account for the last 6 months. Her eyes quickly scanned the rows of figures and descriptions. The $450,000 transfer from a few days ago was the starting point. Just as Mr. Reynolds had reported, the money had gone directly to the luxury car dealership. Done. The first and most blatant piece of evidence confirmed. But Emily didn't stop there. It was no longer about the car. It was about dismantling the entire web of lies Michael had built. She began to go back in time, like an archaeologist excavating the ruins of a destroyed civilization. And what she found sickened her. There was a clear pattern. Every time Michael went on a business trip, there were always double transactions. One at a corporate hotel for which a report was submitted to the office, and another on a personal credit card at a romantic villa or boutique hotel in the same area. On a 3-day trip to San Francisco last month, the official report said he had stayed at a hotel from the Sterling Group's chain, but the credit card statement showed a charge for a private villa with a pool in Napa Valley, along with bills for a couple's spa treatment and a dinner at a restaurant famous for its romantic atmosphere. Then there were the expenses with vague names. Client entertainment expenses turned out to be purchases at luxury jewelry boutiques. Emily zoomed in on one transaction. The date coincided with a week before she saw the diamond earrings on Chloe. Office supply purchases turned out to be the purchase of several designer handbags from a boutique in Paris when Michael was supposed to be at a real estate conference in Boston. The lies were so systematic, so meticulous. Michael wasn't just having an affair, he was building a parallel universe of luxury for his mistress, and Emily was paying for it all. Every cent of every luxury Chloe flaunted, every designer garment that covered her body, every drop of champagne she drank, had been bought with Emily's sweat and her family's legacy. The pain in her heart had gone numb, replaced by a cold rage that chilled her to the bone. She opened another folder that gave her access to Michael's phone bills. Hundreds of calls and messages to one number, a number that appeared without a name, just a series of digits. The longest calls were made late at night, the hours when Michael claimed to be working late or unable to sleep. She didn't need to hear their conversations. The data in front of her was enough to paint a full and disgusting picture. She saved all the evidence, making a copy on an encrypted hard drive. She compiled the evidence like a prosecutor preparing an indictment. Each bank statement, each credit card bill, each call log, they were the nails that would seal Michael's fate. The sound of the shower in the bathroom stopped. Emily glanced at the clock in the corner of her screen. She had been immersed in this for almost an hour. With a swift movement, she closed all the applications, cleared her browsing history, and shut down the laptop. She stood up, smoothed her clothes, and left the office, locking the door behind her. When she entered the bedroom, Michael was already in bed, wearing only a pair of shorts, his hair still slightly damp. He smiled when he saw her. There you are. I thought you fell asleep out there." He patted the empty space beside him. Emily walked to her vanity and began to remove her makeup with slow, controlled movements. She could see Michael's face reflected in the mirror, a handsome face that now seemed like a grotesque mask. "I was just finishing up some emails," she lied. Lying to Michael now felt so easy, so natural. She had learned from the master. She finished her nightly routine and finally got into bed next to him. He instantly pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her from behind and whispering in her ear, "Thank you for everything, darling. Without you, I could never have become who I am." The irony of that statement was so sharp that Emily almost laughed out loud. She lay still, rigid in his arms. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to plan. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, she fell asleep with her back to her husband, not just physically, but mentally. The digital trail had spoken, and in the silent courtroom of her mind, the verdict was in. All that remained was the execution. The next morning, the charade continued. Emily woke up first, made the coffee, and sat at the table as if nothing had happened. When Michael came down, she greeted him with the same smile as always. If he noticed anything strange, he was too wrapped up in his own world to tell. He ate breakfast quickly, boasting about his plans to expand the company's wings. Emily just listened, nodding occasionally, mentally recording every lie that came out of her husband's mouth. "I'm having lunch with an old friend today. I probably won't be back at the office afterward," Emily said as she spread jam on her toast. "Who?" Michael asked distractedly, more focused on his phone. "Jessica. We haven't seen each other in a long time," Emily replied. Michael just made a sound of acknowledgement. The name Jessica Davis raised no suspicion. He knew Jessica was Emily's best friend from college. What he didn't know was that Jessica was one of the most feared divorce attorneys in the city. They met in a private room at a 5-star hotel restaurant, a room where discretion was absolute. Jessica was waiting. She was the opposite of Emily. If Emily was still water, Jessica was fire. She had short hair, her style was sharp, and her gaze missed no detail. "I had a bad feeling ever since you told me to meet you here, Emily," Jessica said, even before the waiter poured the water. Emily wasted no time. She placed a tablet on the table and slid it toward Jessica. "See for yourself." For nearly 20 minutes, the only sounds in the room were Jessica's increasingly agitated breathing and the occasional muffled curse. She swiped through page after page of the documents Emily had prepared. Copies of bank statements, credit card bills highlighted with a digital marker, call logs, and even the photo of the red sports car Emily had secretly taken when Chloe was distracted. When she finished, Jessica put the tablet down sharply. Her face was red with anger. "That bastard, that parasitic, ungrateful bastard. I told you from the beginning he was only after your money." Emily remained calm. "I don't need an I told you so, Jessica. I need a strategy." The anger on Jessica's face slowly dissipated, replaced by a cold professionalism. She switched from friend mode to lawyer mode. "Okay. First, your prenuptial agreement is ironclad. All assets in your name before the marriage and all those derived from your family's legacy are exclusively yours. That's already safe. And the company? He's the CEO of one of the subsidiaries," Emily asked. "It's a position you gave him. You can take it away at any moment. The board will back you 100%. He has no shares in his name, right?" "Not a single one," Emily replied firmly. "Good." Jessica's eyes gleamed. "Our plan will be an ambush. We prepare all the ammunition, the divorce filing, the termination notice, the asset freeze. We strike from all fronts at once. When he least expects it, we'll knock him down so hard he'll never get back up." Jessica began to scribble the key points of the legal strategy in a notebook. They discussed every detail, from the division of assets to the grounds for divorce. They would present in court infidelity and financial fraud, and how to get him out of the house without unnecessary drama. "Most importantly, Emily," Jessica said, looking intently at her friend, "until day, you have to act completely normal. Show no emotion. Don't give him the slightest reason to suspect. We need the absolute element of surprise." "Don't worry," Emily replied, her eyes as cold as ice. "He won't suspect a thing." After lunch, Emily didn't go home. She went straight to the headquarters of the Sterling Group. She greeted employees with a kind smile as she crossed the imposing lobby. As always, no one could guess the storm raging inside her. She called Mr. Reynolds to her office, a man in his late 52s who had worked for the Carter family since Emily's father was alive. Mr. Reynolds entered quietly and respectfully. He was the embodiment of loyalty and efficiency. He had watched Emily grow from a child to a leader, and his allegiance had never wavered. Emily didn't beat around the bush. She looked at Mr. Reynolds with the same look she would use to order a multi-million-dollar acquisition. "Mr. Reynolds, I have a mission for you. Extremely confidential and sensitive," she said in a neutral voice. Mr. Reynolds nodded. "I am at your service, ma'am. I want you to prepare all the necessary documentation to regain control of all assets in my name. Convert all joint accounts to sole ownership. Prepare notifications for all banks to remove Michael Anderson as an authorized user on all my credit cards. Contact all investment managers and revoke his access. I want to completely shut every financial door in his name that originates from me." Mr. Reynolds listened, without his expression changing. But Emily could see a faint glimmer of understanding in his eyes. He had likely suspected something for a long time, but his professionalism had prevented him from saying anything. "All of this," Emily continued, "is to be prepared but not executed. Keep all documents in your personal safe. No one else can know. You will wait for my signal, when I send you a text message with a single word. Now you will press all the buttons simultaneously, at that very instant." "Understood, ma'am." Mr. Reynolds's voice was firm. "I will have everything ready today." "One more thing," Emily added. "Prepare a letter of termination for cause for Michael Anderson, CEO of Sterling Properties. The reason will be misappropriation of company funds for personal gain. Attach the evidence of the transfers you already have." This time, a glint crossed Mr. Reynolds's eyes, not of surprise, but of satisfaction. "It will be a pleasure, ma'am." After Mr. Reynolds left, Emily leaned back in her chair. She looked out at the cityscape from her towering office window. She felt tired, but also powerful. Her allies were now in position. The lawyer had prepared the legal cannons. The financial manager was ready to cut the supply lines. She had placed all her chess pieces. Now she was a general on a hilltop, observing the battlefield, waiting for the right moment to order the dawn attack. All she had to do was keep acting for a few more days, to dance one last dance with a husband who didn't know his music was about to stop. The following days felt like walking underwater. Time moved slowly. Every movement was heavy and calculated. For Michael, nothing had changed. The world still revolved around him. The sun still rose for him. He didn't realize he was dancing on the edge of a cliff to the music his wife was playing. The invisible director, Emily, played every note to perfection, guiding him toward his inevitable end. She became an even better wife than she had been. She greeted him at home with a warm smile. She listened intently to his fictional stories and even offered him clever advice on his imaginary projects. She was an award-winning actress on the stage of her own theater. She cooked his favorite meals, made sure his shirts were perfectly pressed, and let him believe he was the king of this palace. Michael's confidence swelled to dangerous levels. He interpreted Emily's sweetness as a sign of resignation, her silence as proof that she had accepted her role as a docile provider. He became more careless, more arrogant. He no longer tried to hide the scent of Chloe's perfume on his shirt collar, assuming Emily was too stupid or too scared to notice. One evening, he came home with a small velvet box. He handed it to Emily with the smile of a philanthropist. "For you, darling." Emily opened the box. Inside was a common silver designer brooch adorned with a few cubic zirconia that sparkled falsely. It was a piece of jewelry she would never wear, a cheap object that felt like an insult compared to the collection of jewelry inherited from her mother. She knew this was hush money, a small offering to appease Michael's conscience that might prick him from time to time. "Thank you, Michael. It's beautiful." Emily's voice sounded sincere. She even allowed him to pin the brooch on her blouse. She looked at herself in the mirror, seeing her husband standing behind her with a satisfied smile. In Emily's eyes, the brooch looked like a badge of shame. The final judgment came a week after Emily's meeting with Jessica. Michael was getting ready to go out. He was wearing his best suit, had generously doused himself in cologne, and seemed extremely excited. "Tonight's the night, honey," he told Emily, who was reading in bed. "I'm having dinner with my biggest potential investor. If this deal closes, we'll open a branch in Dubai." Emily closed the book. She knew, thanks to the tracker she had secretly installed in his car, that his destination was not a business hotel, but the most romantic and expensive French restaurant in the city, the same restaurant where Michael had proposed to her. The irony was delicious. "Do you need anything for tonight?" Emily asked, playing her part. Michael's face lit up. This was the bait he had been waiting for. "Ah, it's good you ask. I was a little worried about my credit card limit. After the car thing yesterday, I haven't had time to sort it out. I don't want to have an embarrassing moment when the check comes, treating someone so important." He paused, waiting for Emily to offer a solution. "And?" Emily asked, feigning innocence. "Could you transfer some cash to my account, just in case? Let's say $1 million. I promise you, it will be the best investment we've ever made." His voice was filled with greed. $1 million, a fantastic sum, asked for as casually as if he were asking for candy. That money would never be an investment for the company. It would be the fund for a lavish vacation in Dubai for him and Chloe under the guise of a business trip. Emily looked at him for a long moment, a momentary silence. Michael grew nervous, thinking perhaps he had asked for too much. Then Emily smiled, a smile so soft, so full of love. "Of course, darling. Anything for your dreams. I'll take care of it in the morning." The tension left Michael's shoulders instantly. He let out a laugh of relief, walked over to the side of the bed, and hugged Emily tightly. He kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of her hair. "You're the best wife in the world, Emily. I'm so lucky to have you," he whispered. And he meant it. He truly believed his own words. In his small mind, he really did feel lucky. He had it all: a rich, docile wife, a young mistress who adored him, and a life of luxury without having to work for it. Emily didn't return the hug. Her arms simply remained at her sides. She closed her eyes, letting that last lie wash over her. She could feel the steady beat of Michael's heart against her back, the heartbeat of a man who didn't know his life was about to end in a matter of hours. It was the snake being embraced by its prey, enjoying one last moment of warmth before injecting its venom. "I hope tonight goes well," Emily said when he finally let her go. "Of course it will," Michael replied confidently. He grabbed his car keys, blew a kiss to Emily, and walked out of the room with the stride of a conqueror. Emily remained motionless, listening to the sound of Michael's car fading down the driveway. The silence that remained felt dense. She got out of bed, walked to the window, and looked out into the dark night. The dance was over. The puppeteer had played the final note. Now it was Emily's turn to take the stage. She picked up her phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up, showing the contact: Mr. Reynolds. Her finger hovered over the keyboard, ready to type the single word that would bring everything crashing down. For several minutes after Michael's car had completely disappeared from view, leaving only a trail of arrogance on the empty driveway, Emily remained by the window. She let the silence of the house envelop her, bear witness to what was about to happen. There was no doubt, no regret, only a cold, absolute clarity. She had given Michael enough rope to hang himself. Tonight, she was simply going to kick away the chair. She returned to the bed, not to lie down, but to sit on the edge, her back straight. She picked up her phone. The bright screen illuminated her expressionless face. She opened the messaging app, selected Mr. Reynolds' contact. The cursor blinked, awaiting her command. Without hesitation, she typed a single word. "Now." She pressed send. The message was gone. 2 blue check marks appeared instantly: sent and read. Elsewhere in the city, in a still-lit office, a brief text message was received. Without delay, without question, a cascade of digital commands was executed with military precision. Emails were sent to the board of directors, notifications were dispatched to every bank, and orders were executed in investment systems. In less than 5 minutes, the financial universe Michael believed was his ceased to exist. Emily placed the phone face down on the nightstand. She stood up, went to the bathroom, and turned on the hot water in the shower. She washed her body as if cleansing the residue of 5 years of lies from her skin. When she emerged, wrapped in a comfortable silk pajama set, she felt lighter than she had in months. The curtain had fallen, the performance was over. Now, she just had to wait for the lead actor to realize he'd been left alone on a dark stage. Meanwhile, across town, Michael and Chloe were on top of the world. They sat at the best table in the French restaurant, the very same one where Michael had knelt before Emily years ago. They ordered the most expensive menu: lobster thermidor, a 5 Wagyu steak, and a bottle of Dom Perignon. "To us, baby," Michael said, raising his glass, "and to our future in Dubai." Chloe laughed delightedly, clinking her glass against his. "I can't wait. I've already been looking at apartments in the Burj Khalifa. The views will be incredible." "Whatever you want, gorgeous. The sky's the limit," Michael promised. He felt invincible. He had conquered Emily, he had her money, and now he had this beautiful young woman by his side. He was the king of the world. They enjoyed their dinner leisurely, laughing and planning their life of opulence. When the bill came, the figure was astronomical. Michael simply smiled. He pulled out the black metal credit card he was always so proud of and handed it to the waiter like a sultan. A few minutes later, the waiter returned with a slightly uncomfortable expression. "I'm sorry, sir, the card has been declined." Michael's smile froze. "Declined? Impossible." "Try it again. The terminal must be faulty." The waiter nodded, left, and returned with the same expression. "It's still not working, sir. It says to contact the bank." Chloe's face began to change. "What's wrong, Michael? Don't tell me you forgot to pay the bill." "Of course not," Michael snapped, humiliation beginning to creep in. "It must be a banking system error." He pulled another card from his wallet, a platinum one. "Try this." The result was the same. Declined. He tried another. Declined. A cold sweat began to form on Michael's temples. He could hear the whispers from other tables. Chloe's adoring face was now a sneer of contempt. "I'm just going to an ATM for a moment," Michael said, trying to maintain his composure. He stood up and walked quickly to the ATM in the hotel lobby. He inserted his card, typed in his PIN, and selected the option to withdraw cash. The screen flickered, and then displayed a horrifying message: insufficient funds. His heart stopped. Impossible. He knew Emily was supposed to transfer the money in the morning, but he always had at least. He had 20,000 inches his main account for emergencies. He tried again, this time selecting check balance. The screen displayed a figure that made him dizzy. Panic seized him. He took a deep breath. Calm down. It must be a system glitch. He pulled out his phone and with trembling hands opened his mobile banking app. He had to enter his password and fingerprint. When the app opened, he felt his world collapse. The same figure stared back at him from his phone's screen. $17.45. All his account's savings. Investment showed a balance of 0 or minuscule figures. It was as if a giant black hole had sucked away all his wealth. He returned to the table, his face pale. "Well?" Chloe asked sharply. "There must be a major problem with the banking system tonight. I can't access any of my accounts." His voice sounded weak. Chloe looked at him with disgust. "A banking problem? Or were you broke this whole time and just showing off?" "I'm not broke," Michael whispered loudly, drawing the attention of the entire restaurant. To resolve the embarrassing situation, Chloe had to pay with her own card, complaining endlessly. The drive back in her red sports car was cold and silent. The fire in their relationship had evaporated along with the balance in Michael's bank account. As soon as they arrived at Chloe's apartment, Michael tried to contact the bank's customer service, but it was after hours. He didn't know what to do. He felt isolated, disconnected from the world that sustained him. In his panic, only one rational explanation came to mind: this has to be Emily's doing. Maybe she had made a huge expense, or a hacker had attacked their accounts. Not for a moment did he consider that it could be a deliberate action by his docile wife. He had to go home. He had to talk to Emily, maybe yell at her, demand an explanation. He drove toward his home in a state of confusion, leaving behind Chloe, who watched him with a cold glare from her apartment window. He didn't realize he was speeding toward his own judgment, one in which the judge, jury, and executioner were the same person, the woman waiting for him silently at home. Michael's drive home was a blur of fury and confusion. His thoughts raced faster than the car, trying to piece together an impossible puzzle, a system failure. It couldn't be that every bank, at the same time, had a problem only with his accounts. Hacking? Who would hack him? All roads in his mind led back to one name, Emily. But his assumptions were still vague and unfocused. Maybe Emily had made a huge purchase without telling him and emptied the joint account. Yes, that had to be it. Women didn't know how to control their spending. Or maybe she got scared by something and moved the money to a safe place. How foolish. She didn't understand how money worked. Anger gave him energy. The humiliation he had suffered in front of Chloe transformed into a burning rage. He had found someone to blame, and Emily was the easiest target. He pictured himself bursting through the door, yelling at his wife, demanding an explanation for her carelessness, and then magnanimously forgiving her after she cried and apologized. The scenario restored a sliver of the control he had lost. When he turned onto the long, manicured driveway of their Park Avenue building, the sheer grandeur of the place felt like a slap in the face. The lights were on in their penthouse, which looked serene and peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside him. He screeched the red sports car, once his symbol of triumph, to a halt in his designated spot, a violation of the night's stillness. He slammed the car door and strode toward the elevator, ready to unleash his fury. When he arrived on their private floor, the massive teakwood door to the penthouse was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. "Emily," his voice echoed in the empty foyer. "Emily Carter, where are you?" There was no answer. He thought she must be asleep, oblivious to the disaster that had occurred. His anger grew. He crossed the expansive living room and headed for the master bedroom, but he stopped short. In the dimly lit family room, under the warm glow of a reading lamp, he saw her. Emily was not asleep. She was sitting in her favorite armchair, dressed in silk pajamas, a hardcover book resting in her lap. On a small table beside her, a cup of tea was still steaming faintly. She looked so calm, so serene, as if she were enjoying a peaceful evening. The scene was so wrong, so discordant with the chaos Michael felt, that it threw him off balance. Emily looked up from her book, her eyes meeting his. She didn't look surprised or scared. She simply watched him with an impassive face. "You're back," she said, her voice flat. Emily's calmness was like gasoline on the fire of Michael's anger. "Am I back? I've just had the most humiliating night of my life, and you ask me if I'm back?" His voice rose, shattering the elegant quiet of the room. Emily closed her book with a slow movement and set it on the table. She didn't get up from her chair. "Humiliating? Why? Why?" Michael laughed with scorn, pacing in front of her like a caged lion. "Because all of our cards were declined. I tried to get cash from an ATM, and the balance was zero. I don't know what you've done with our money, but you've ruined us. Do you know that?" Emily took a sip of tea. "They aren't our cards, Michael. They're my cards, and I'm not ruined. My finances are perfectly fine." The calm, logical response frustrated Michael even more. "What do you mean?" "Yours? We're married. What happened to all the accounts? What the hell did you do? Did you buy something expensive? Diamonds? Handbags? Explain yourself, Emily." He pointed a finger at her, trying to be menacing. "I haven't bought anything today," Emily replied with astonishing patience. "Then why is all the money gone? Don't tell me we've been scammed or hacked." "My God, Emily, that must be it. We have to call the police right now." "My assets are fine," Emily interrupted him again, her voice still quiet but now with a sharp, cold edge. "It seems the problem is only with your access." Michael stopped pacing. That last sentence finally cut through the fog of his anger. "The problem is only with your access." That no longer sounded like an accident. It sounded like intent. He looked at his wife, truly looked at her for the first time that night. The woman sitting before him was not the Emily Carter he knew. There was no softness, no resignation. There was something alien in her eyes, something hard as steel. A terrible premonition crept down his spine. He felt like prey that has just realized it has walked into a trap. What do you mean?" he asked, his voice now stripped of all arrogance with a slight tremor. Emily set down her teacup. She looked him directly in the eyes, a gaze so piercing that Michael felt naked. The silence filled the room. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock seemed to grow louder, counting down the last moments of the life Michael knew. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wasn't shouting anymore. He approached, stopping in front of Emily, who remained seated. It was an awkward posture, having to look down slightly at his wife. "Emily," he whispered, his voice now pleading. "Tell me what's happening." His inner storm had subsided, replaced by a cold, dense fear. He looked at his wife's face, the face that had until now been his guarantee of security and luxury, and for the first time, he realized he didn't know her at all. "What have you done?" he asked again. The phrase that had been an accusation was now a desperate question. At that desperate question, something finally shifted within Emily. The mask of calm she had worn for days didn't crack, it was deliberately discarded. Her expressionless face slowly morphed into a smile that did not reach her eyes. A cold, commanding smile, tinged with disappointment. The smile of a goddess passing judgment on a mortal who had offended her. "What have I done?" she repeated softly. "I've simply taken back what is mine." Michael stared at her, confused. "Yours? Emily, we built all of this together." In standing, Emily let out a short, humorless laugh. "Don't fool yourself, Michael. Not even now. You built nothing. You were a guest I allowed to stay in my castle, a guest I allowed to wear my king's clothes, to play with my toys." Each word was a slap. Michael took a step back as if he had been physically struck. "What? What are you talking about?" Emily didn't answer. She reached to the table beside her, not for her teacup, but for a thick manila envelope that had been lying there, unseen in the dim light. She dropped it on the coffee table between them and opened it. "You wanted an explanation, didn't you? Fine, let's begin." She spoke with the tone of a CEO presiding over a board meeting. She pulled out the first sheet. It was a large, glossy photograph, a picture of Chloe leaning arrogantly against the red Porsche, a triumphant smirk on her face. The photo, taken from an angle Chloe hadn't noticed, perfectly captured the essence of her arrogance. Michael's face went pale instantly. He recognized the woman, he recognized the car. He opened his mouth to speak, to search for a denial, an excuse, but no sound came out. Emily didn't wait. She placed the next sheet on top of the photo. It was a copy of a bank statement, with several transactions highlighted in yellow. "This is the $450,000 transferred from my account to yours." And right below it, the down payment for this car from your account to the dealership. "A car you bought her with my money, which she proudly showed me, telling me she was worth so much more than the boring old wife you have at home." Emily repeated Chloe's words in a flat, emotionless tone that made them 1,000 times more cutting. Michael gasped. He never imagined Chloe would be so foolish. Emily continued placing the evidence, one by one, on the table, stacking them like cards in a game she had already won. "This," she said, dropping a series of credit card bills, "is proof of your stay in a romantic villa in Napa Valley, on the exact dates you were supposed to be at a conference in San Francisco, complete with a bill for a couple's spa treatment. This receipt from Tiffany's is for the diamond earrings she's probably wearing right now. And this other stack of bills, designer handbags, expensive dinners, countless gifts, all justified as client entertainment expenses. You didn't just cheat on me, Michael. You committed fraud within your own home. You embezzled from your primary source of funding." Michael stared, stunned, at the pile of papers on the table. It was his entire life of lies, laid out in neat, documented order. There was no room for denial, no space for excuses. He had been caught so flagrantly, so humiliatingly. He crumbled, his knees gave out, and he fell to the floor on the thick rug in front of Emily. His image as a powerful, successful man had shattered in a matter of minutes. "Emily, he stammered, searching for words. "I can explain. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please, forgive me." Tears began to stream down his cheeks, the tears of a man who didn't regret his actions, only being caught. Emily watched him from her chair, her position now elevated, looking down at the man kneeling at her feet. She felt no compassion, no pity, only relief. "It's too late for apologies, Michael," Emily said quietly. "Your game is over." She pulled the last document from the envelope, the thickest one stapled together. She slid it across the table until it stopped just in front of the kneeling Michael. "What is this?" Michael whispered, his tear-filled eyes fixed on the document's cover page. "The divorce filing," Emily answered. "My lawyer filed it this morning. With all of this evidence, the process will be very swift. You will get nothing. Our prenuptial agreement is very clear." Michael looked from the document back to Emily, total desperation now etched onto his face. "No, Emily, please don't do this. I love you. I'll leave her, I promise. We can start over. Think about our 5 years together." "5 years that I paid for?" Emily retorted sharply. "And love? Don't make me laugh. You didn't love me. You loved my money, the comfort it provided, the status you got from being by my side. And now all of that is ending." Emily finally rose from her chair. She walked toward the doorway of the family room, her movements elegant and decisive. "Get out of my house tonight." Her voice echoed in the silent room. "All your privileges have been revoked. That sports car will be repossessed by the dealership tomorrow morning, as I will not be making any further payments. Your expensive clothes, your watches, everything in this house is mine. You may take the clothes you are wearing." She paused in the doorway, looking back at Michael one last time. He was still kneeling on the floor, sobbing amidst the pile of his betrayal's evidence. "You came into my life with nothing," Emily stated, a line she had rehearsed in her mind. "And you will leave the same way." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Michael alone in the ruins of his life. The last smile of a wife had been delivered, and with it, the door had been closed forever. The sound of Emily's footsteps retreating on the marble floor was the loudest sound Michael had ever heard. Each step was like a gavel, shattering what was left of his world. He remained kneeling on the floor, surrounded by the printed evidence of his own stupidity. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. The silence Emily left behind was more terrifying than any scream. For a moment, he didn't move. His brain refused to process reality. This had to be a nightmare. Soon he would wake up in his comfortable bed, with Emily beside him, and this would all be a fantasy created by his guilty conscience. He squeezed his eyes shut, wishing for everything to go back to normal when he opened them. But when he did, the pile of papers was still there. The divorce filing was still staring at him with its cold, black letters. The denial phase shattered, replaced by an overwhelming wave of panic. He had to do something. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't lose everything. With a panicked motion, he scrambled to his feet, his legs feeling like jelly. He ran out of the family room, his eyes searching frantically for Emily. He saw her at the base of the grand spiral staircase, one hand on the banister, about to go up. "Emily, wait!" he cried, his voice hoarse from crying and desperation. Emily stopped, but she didn't turn around. Her back, straight and proud, looked like an impenetrable wall. Michael ran to her and grabbed her arm. His touch felt wrong, like touching a statue of ice. "Please, don't do this. Let's talk. I'll do anything." Emily finally turned, but her gaze didn't go to his face. She looked down at his hand, gripping her arm with an expression of disgust. Slowly, as if he had received an electric shock, Michael let go. "There's nothing left to talk about, Michael," Emily said, her voice without the slightest tremor. "Everything has been said." "But I love you," Michael tried, his last weapon, the words that had always managed to melt her. "I know I made a mistake, a huge one, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. She's nothing, just a distraction. You're my world, Emily." The manipulation that had once been so effective now sounded hollow and pathetic. Emily didn't even blink. "If I were your world, you wouldn't have shattered it. You would have protected it. You didn't destroy my world, Michael. You just tried to steal its contents, and now your time is up." She turned again and started up the stairs, one step at a time, with a calm, steady pace. Desperation made Michael lose his reason. He couldn't accept defeat. "I'm not leaving," he shouted, his voice bouncing off the high walls of the foyer. "This is my home too, I'm your husband." At the top of the stairs, Emily stopped and looked down at him. Their positions were now completely inverted. She was the queen on her palace balcony, looking down at him from above. "You are no longer my husband, and this was never your home. Now leave with what little dignity you have left, or I will have you removed without it." The threat made Michael's blood boil. "You can't throw me out." Emily didn't answer. She simply took out her phone, pressed a speed dial number, and held it to her ear. "Head of security, please come to the foyer right now. I have a guest who is refusing to leave." Less than a minute later, two large, stone-faced men in security uniforms entered through a side door. They were the head of security and his subordinate, the same men who had always greeted Michael with respect, held the door for him, and called him Sir. They stopped in front of Michael, standing at attention. The senior one, the head of security, looked at Michael with an apologetic but firm expression. "I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson. Ma'am has asked that you leave the property." This sight was the pinnacle of humiliation, being escorted out of his own home by his own staff. Michael's face turned red with rage and shame. "You can't touch me. I pay your salaries." "Our salaries are paid by Mrs. Carter, sir," the head of security replied calmly. "Please, don't make this more difficult." Michael looked at the two guards, then up at Emily, who was still observing from the top of the stairs like a director, ensuring the final scene unfolded according to the script. He realized he had lost. Physical resistance would only add to his list of humiliations. Completely defeated, his shoulders slumped, he turned around. He walked past the two uniformed men and toward the front door, which was still open. Each step felt like it carried a ton of weight. He didn't dare look back. He didn't want to see the triumphant smile he imagined on Emily's face, though he suspected there might be no smile at all, just emptiness. As he crossed the threshold into the cold night air, he heard a voice behind him. "One moment," Emily said from the top of the stairs. A foolish spark of hope ignited briefly in Michael's heart. Has she changed her mind? He stopped and turned slowly. Emily wasn't looking at him. She was looking at his hand. "Leave the car keys on the console by the door. That car is not yours." The hope was extinguished as quickly as it had arrived. The final humiliation. Without a word, he dug into his pockets and pulled out the keys with the Porsche logo, the symbol of his glory just hours before. He stepped back inside, dropped them with a small clatter on the marble console table, and walked out again without looking at anyone. As soon as he was outside, the heavy teakwood door closed behind him with a firm, final click. The sound of the lock turning from the inside was a clear seal on his fate. He was left alone in the dark driveway. Behind him, a palace filled with light and warmth. In front of him, darkness and uncertainty. He looked at the red sports car, which now seemed like a monument to his stupidity. He couldn't even leave in it. He checked his pockets, only his wallet full of useless cards and his phone. He opened a rideshare app, only to realize with horror that his digital wallet balance was also zero. He had nothing, absolutely nothing. He collapsed onto the cold pavement, in front of the doors of the home he could never enter again. His choked sobs were lost in the silence of the night. The door was locked, and behind it, his 5 years of glorious life were gone forever. 1 year passed. The seasons changed, and so did lives. For Emily, that year was a process of detoxification and reconstruction. The divorce was swift and efficient, as Jessica had promised. With the overwhelming evidence, Michael stood no chance of fighting. He disappeared from Emily's life as quickly as he had entered, leaving only a slowly fading mark. Emily dove back into her work with renewed energy. Without the emotional baggage and exhausting theatrics, her mind was sharper, her decisions bolder. The Sterling Group launched 2 new luxury hotel projects and acquired a rival real estate firm. Under her sole leadership, her business empire shone brighter than ever. But the biggest change wasn't on the financial balance sheets, it was in herself. The empty space in her bed now felt like room to breathe. The silence in her home was no longer a sign of loneliness, but of peace. She rediscovered old hobbies, painting, horseback riding, and solo trips with just a backpack. Her smiles were more frequent now, genuine, and no longer shadowed by doubt. One sunny Sunday afternoon, Emily was sitting with Jessica at a trendy rooftop cafe in the middle of the city. They were enjoying coffee and cake, watching the bustling streets below. A gentle breeze played with Emily's hair, which was longer now. "I haven't seen you this happy in a long time, Emily," Jessica said, smiling sincerely at her friend. "I feel like I just got out of a prison I built myself," Emily replied, her gaze lost in the distance. "Funnily enough, I don't even hate him anymore. I feel nothing. It was just a very expensive business lesson." Jessica laughed. "A lesson that's made you billions, you mean?" And they both laughed together. It was then, in the midst of her laughter, that Emily's attention was drawn to a small commotion at the intersection below. An old, beat-up green Chrysler Sebring, a model that had been popular some 20 years ago, had stalled in the middle of the road. Thick white smoke billowed from the hood, creating a pathetic and comical scene. Drivers behind began honking incessantly. A man got out of the driver's side of the old car. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and jeans with a small tear in the knee. His hair was a bit long and unkempt, and his face looked tired under the afternoon sun. He pried open the hood with a rough movement, only to jump back as a puff of hot steam hit him in the face. Emily narrowed her eyes. There was something familiar about the man's posture. Just then, the passenger door flew open. A woman stormed out, yelling. She was wearing a dress too tight for the heat and too much makeup. She pointed an angry finger at the driver, her movements full of drama. Jessica's eyes widened as she followed Emily's gaze. "Wait a minute, is that—" Emily nodded silently, her eyes never leaving the scene below. The man was Michael, and the woman was Chloe. They looked so different. The aura of luxury and arrogance that once surrounded them was completely gone, replaced by an air of desperation and irritation. Michael no longer looked like a charismatic young executive. He looked like a middle-aged man defeated by life. Chloe no longer looked like a high-society mistress. She looked like a bad-tempered woman trapped by bad luck. "I told you to get this car fixed. But you never listened to me." Chloe's sharp voice carried faintly up to the rooftop. "Now look, we're going to be late. How embarrassing." "Shut up," Michael shot back, his voice weary. "You think I have money to fix it? We can barely make rent and buy you your new handbag." Their street fight, amidst the smoke and honking horns, was a tragicomic spectacle, the symbol of their downfall on display for the world to see. The red sports car had become a smoking wreck. The luxury apartment had become a small rental. The love based on materialism had crumbled when the material disappeared. Seeing that scene, seeing the two people who had once caused her so much pain, now hurting each other over trivial matters, Emily couldn't help it. A small chuckle escaped her lips. The chuckle grew, becoming louder, freer, until it finally erupted into a full-throated laugh. She covered her mouth, trying to contain it, but tears of amusement began to well up in her eyes. It was not a bitter laugh, not a laugh of vengeful satisfaction. It was pure and genuine, the laughter that comes from realizing just how absurd life can be. She laughed at the irony of fate. She laughed at their foolishness, and she laughed at the past Emily who had once considered that man her world. Jessica watched her for a moment, and then a wide smile spread across her face, relieved to see her friend finally free from all the baggage of the past. Still with remnants of laughter, Emily raised her half-finished coffee cup. She lifted it slightly toward the scene below to Michael and Chloe still arguing heatedly, a silent toast to karma, which sometimes arrives not as thunder and lightning, but as the very best kind of comedy. And then she turned back around, drank her coffee, and started talking to her friend about the future.